Alex Haley's Roots. The Saga of an American Family is far more than a single book sitting silently on a library shelf. First published in 1976, it exploded into the American consciousness, becoming a cultural phenomenon that reshaped national understanding. The narrative traces Haley's ancestral line, the capture of Kunta Kinte in West Africa, the brutal Middle Passage across generations of enslavement and eventual freedom in the United States. It is a story of profound suffering. At its core, Roots represents the universal human story of family, the search for origins. Alex Haley's quest to trace his lineage back to its African wellspring is a narrative that resonates with people from all backgrounds. The desire to know where we come from, to understand the chain of lives that led to our own existence, is a fundamental part of the human condition. The book's subtitle, The Saga of an American Family, is crucial. It frames the story not as an isolated account of one man's ancestry, but as an archetypal American journey. By personalizing the vast, impersonal history of the African diaspora, Haley gave millions of African Americans a powerful narrative of heritage and a symbolic connection to a past that slavery had intentionally tried to erase. Beyond its personal dimension, Roots serves as a vital piece of historical representation. Before its publication and the subsequent miniseries, the mainstream portrayal of slavery in American culture was often sanitized, romanticized, simply omitted. The contemporary challenges to Roots in schools and libraries stem from a confluence of concerns, each reflecting a different facet of our current cultural anxieties. The most frequently cited reason for these challenges relates to the book's content. Roots does not shy away from depicting the raw brutality of slavery. Whippings, mutilation, emotional torment, sexual violence, systematic rape of enslaved women by their captors. Some parents and community members argue that this material is too mature and traumatic for young students, labeling it as age inappropriate, They express concern that exposure to such graphic content could cause psychological distress and is therefore unsuitable for a school curriculum. A second, and increasingly prominent line of argument against Roots is political in nature. In the polarized climate of 2026, the book has been drawn into the wider culture wars over how race and history are taught in American schools. Critics contend that the story promotes a divisive narrative that focuses too heavily on oppression and suffering. Guilt in white students' shame, in white students a sense of victimhood in black students, thereby undermining national unity. This perspective is often linked to recent legislation and school board policies in several states that aim to restrict teachings deemed to be associated with critical race theory, even when the material, like Roots, predates the term's popular usage by decades. The third major reason cited for challenging Roots involves questions of historical and genealogical accuracy. Since its publication, some historians and genealogists have pointed out discrepancies in Haley's research. They have questioned whether the man he identified as Kunta Kinte was truly his ancestor and have noted that some narrative details in the book may be fictionalized or composite creations, rather than verifiable facts. Opponents of the book's inclusion in curricula seize upon these academic debates to undermine its credibility. They argue that if the book is not a work of pure, unassailable history, it should not be taught as such. This argument, however, often overlooks the book's acknowledged genre as a work of historical fiction and its broader cultural and symbolic truth. It is important to recognize that these three reasons are often intertwined and used strategically in public debates. A challenge might be publicly framed around concerns about age appropriateness, but the underlying motivation may be more political, rooted in a desire to control the historical narrative taught to children. Similarly, critiques of the book's factual accuracy can be deployed to dismiss its powerful emotional and thematic messages about the injustice of slavery. Understanding the full scope of the opposition requires looking beyond the surface-level arguments and recognizing the deeper ideological currents that are fueling the push to remove this foundational text from the hands of students. The controversy over Roots is not happening in a vacuum. It has become intensely relevant now because it is a focal point in a larger nationwide battle over the soul of American history education. Our country is currently engaged in a profound and often acrimonious debate about its own narrative. One perspective advocates for a comprehensive and unflinching examination of the past, including its most painful chapters of injustice and oppression, arguing that this is the only way to understand the present and build a more equitable future. The opposing view champions a more celebratory and patriotic telling of American history, one that emphasizes unity and progress while downplaying or reframing episodes of conflict and inequality. Roots, with its direct and personal confrontation with slavery, stands squarely at the crossroads of these two conflicting philosophies. The urgency of this issue is also amplified by the structure of the American education system, where control is heavily decentralized. Key decisions about curricula and reading lists are made at the state, and, even more frequently, the local school board level. This local control means that the fight over roots is not a single national debate, but a series of skirmishes playing out in thousands of communities across the country. The outcome of these local battles can lead to a fractured educational landscape, where a student's access to important historical and literary works depends entirely on their zip code. This creates a generation of citizens with vastly different understandings of their nation's history, potentially deepening the social and political divides that already exist. This moment also forces us to grapple with the critical distinction between censorship and curriculum curation. Censorship involves the removal of a book or idea primarily because its content is considered objectionable, dangerous, or uncomfortable, effectively limiting intellectual freedom. In contrast, curriculum curation is the professional and necessary process through which educators select materials that are appropriate for a particular age group and aligned with specific learning objectives. Understanding the difference between censorship and curriculum curation is absolutely essential to having a productive conversation about roots and other challenged books. Curation is a fundamental and responsible part of education. Teachers and librarians are trained professionals who curate or select materials every day. They choose books, articles, films suitable for students' developmental stage reading level, specific goals of a lesson. For instance, a teacher might choose an illustrated children's book about Harriet Tubman for third graders while assigning a more complex scholarly article on the Underground Railroad to high school seniors. This is not censorship. It is sound pedagogical practice designed to make learning effective and accessible for all students. Censorship, on the other hand, is driven by a fundamentally different impulse. It is the act of suppressing or removing materials not for pedagogical reasons, but to shield readers from ideas or information deemed objectionable, inconvenient, dangerous. Censorship often stems from a desire to control thought and protect a particular worldview from being challenged. When a school board votes to remove Roots from all high school libraries because its depiction of slavery makes some people uncomfortable or because it conflicts with a preferred political narrative, the action moves beyond curation. It becomes an attempt to limit students' access to a significant cultural and historical perspective, which is the hallmark of censorship. The line between these two concepts can sometimes appear blurry, and those seeking to remove books often frame their actions as curation. A parent might argue they are simply, curating their child's education by demanding the removal of a book with violent scenes. However, the true motive can often be discerned by asking critical questions. Is the book being removed for all students, even those for whom it is age-appropriate? Is the objection based on the ideas within the book rather than its literary or educational merit? Are professional educators and librarians being overruled by political pressure groups? When the answer to these questions is yes, the action more closely resembles censorship. In the case of Roots, the debate is particularly sharp. Proponents of keeping the book argue that for high school students, its challenging content is not a reason for removal, but a catalyst for crucial learning. They contend that grappling with the harsh realities of history is a key part of a mature education. Opponents, however, may insist they are merely curating a more, positive or age-appropriate curriculum. The distinction ultimately hinges on intent. Is the goal to provide the best possible education, which includes difficult topics, or is it to create an educational bubble that excludes challenging ideas and sanitizes history? The answer to that question determines whether we are exercising responsible oversight or engaging in harmful suppression. The removal of a work as significant as Roots from school curricula has consequences that ripple far beyond a single classroom or reading list. One of the most profound effects is the narrowing of our nation's collective memory. Collective memory is the shared pool of knowledge and stories through which a society understands its past and, by extension, itself. Foundational texts like Roots are crucial pillars of that memory. They provide a common reference point for understanding the legacy of slavery. When such books are systematically removed or restricted, the stories they tell are pushed to the margins, and the shared understanding of that history begins to fray, potentially leading to a more fragmented and impoverished national identity for future generations. Furthermore, a primary function of literature and historical narratives in education is to build empathy. Reading stories that transport us into the lives of others, especially those whose experiences are vastly different from our own, is a powerful exercise in human connection. Roots allows a student to walk, metaphorically, in the shoes of Kunta Kinte and his descendants, to feel a fraction of their pain, to feel a fraction of their fear, to feel a fraction of their love, to feel a fraction of their will to survive. This empathetic connection is not just an emotional exercise. It is a cognitive tool that helps students understand the human consequences of historical events and social structures. Removing such stories from the curriculum diminishes opportunities for students to develop this crucial capacity for empathy, which is essential for a compassionate and just society. The act of banning books like Roots for political reasons also contributes directly to the deepening of social and cultural polarization. When one group succeeds in removing a book that is central to another group's history and identity, it is perceived not as a simple curriculum change, but as an act of aggression and disrespect. This can create a toxic environment of resentment and mistrust within communities and across the nation. The debate ceases to be about educational best practices and instead becomes another battleground in the culture wars, where each side feels increasingly alienated from and attacked by the other. This dynamic makes constructive dialogue about our shared past and future nearly impossible. Finally, eliminating challenging texts from schools sends a damaging message to students about the nature of learning itself. It suggests that education is about comfort and the affirmation of existing beliefs rather than intellectual curiosity and the courage to confront difficult truths. It teaches students to fear or avoid ideas that are complex or unsettling. A robust education should do the opposite. It should equip students with the critical thinking skills to analyze challenging material, to distinguish fact from fiction, to weigh different perspectives, and to form their own informed opinions. By removing Roots, we risk fostering intellectual timidity instead of the intellectual courage our democracy so desperately needs. At the heart of the debate over Roots lies a fundamental and persistent tension in American society: the balance between the rights of parents to direct their children's upbringing and the responsibility of public schools to provide a broad, comprehensive education. Those who advocate for restricting access to books like Roots often do so under the banner of parental rights. They argue that parents, not teachers or administrators, are the ultimate authority on what is best for their children. They believe they have the right to shield their children from material they deem to be morally inappropriate, psychologically inappropriate, ideologically inappropriate, and that the school system must respect and accommodate these choices. This perspective raises important and valid questions about the role of families in public education. Parents are, without question, the primary caregivers and educators in a child's life. Schools are meant to be partners with families, not adversaries. The call for greater transparency in curriculum and for processes that allow parents to voice concerns is a reasonable one. Many districts have policies that allow parents to opt their child out of a specific assignment or offer an alternative reading if a particular book is a point of contention. This approach seeks to respect individual family values while maintaining the integrity of the overall curriculum for the broader student body. However, the concept of parental rights becomes more complicated when the demands of a few parents lead to the removal of a book for all students. Critics of this broader approach argue that public education serves a civic purpose that transcends the preferences of any single family. Its goal is to prepare all students to be informed citizens and engaged citizens in a diverse, pluralistic democracy. This requires exposing them to a wide range of ideas, histories, and perspectives, including those that may be uncomfortable or may challenge a particular family's beliefs. If curricula were tailored to the most restrictive demands of the most sensitive parent, the educational experience for everyone would be drastically impoverished. Ultimately, navigating this tension requires a delicate balancing act. A healthy democracy needs both engaged parents and a robust public education system that fosters critical thinking and historical literacy. The challenge is to create a system that honors parental input without allowing it to become a veto power over essential educational content. This means fostering open communication between schools and families, establishing clear and fair processes for reviewing challenge materials, and affirming the professional expertise of educators. It requires a commitment to finding common ground rather than retreating into opposing camps, ensuring that the debate is about what is truly best for all students, not just a few. In the landscape of American culture, Roots is not merely a book or a miniseries. It has become a powerful symbol. It symbolizes the act of historical recovery, the reclamation of a narrative suppressed for centuries. For countless African Americans, the story of Kunta Kinte gave a name and a face to the unnamed ancestor lost to the Middle Passage and the erasure of slavery. Haley's work symbolized piecing together a broken history and asserting a heritage that stretched back across the ocean. Its existence is an act of defiance against historical amnesia, representing the power of memory and identity. The story also stands as a symbol of media's capacity to instigate social change. The 1977 broadcast was transformative. It captivated a nation and shifted public consciousness. It proved a Black-centered narrative could command mainstream attention and become a shared cultural experience. Roots symbolizes what TV and popular culture can do: entertain, educate, challenge, foster national introspection. Today's debates over its place in schools show its power to provoke. For opponents, Roots symbolizes something else: a divisive, guilt-inducing approach to history. They say it focuses on America's sins over its triumphs, undermining patriotism. Their fight to remove Roots from schools symbolizes a push to reclaim the national story and promote a more unified American identity. The book becomes a stand-in for ideas about race and history they oppose. So the debate is rarely about a book alone. It's a proxy war over national identity. Who are we as a people? What parts of our history should we elevate? What parts should we confront? Who decides which stories are taught? This single saga encapsulates the struggle to define the American narrative for the next generation. Whether seen as reclaimed heritage and historical truth or as divisive ideology, Roots' status in schools speaks volumes about who we are and who we aspire to be. The continuing controversy surrounding Roots is ultimately about more than just one book. It is a profound reflection of our nation's ongoing struggle with its own history and the stories we choose to tell ourselves about who we are. This debate forces us to confront a fundamental question: what is the purpose of teaching history? Is it to create a sense of comfort and uncomplicated patriotism, or to foster a clear-eyed understanding of the past? Complexities, triumphs, tragedies. To prepare students for the challenges of the present, the answers we choose will have lasting implications for our collective memory and the future of our democracy. Removing a work like Roots from the curriculum does more than alter a reading list. It sends a powerful message. Some parts of our history are too uncomfortable to face. It risks creating a sanitized, incomplete narrative that papers over deep wounds of injustice that have shaped our society. To build a more just, empathetic future, the next generation must have access to stories that build empathy, that challenge them to think critically, that provide an honest accounting of where we have been. Works like Roots, even with flaws and difficult content, are essential gateways to deeper understanding. They are not meant to induce guilt, but to foster awareness. As communities navigate these debates, the path forward must be paved with open dialogue, not censorship. School boards, educators. Parents, students must engage in transparent conversations grounded in educational principles, not political litmus tests. We must respect parents' concerns while upholding educators' responsibility to teach history honestly and thoroughly. This includes teaching students how to analyze historical sources, how to discuss sensitive topics respectfully, and how to understand that a nation's story is a complex tapestry of pride and of shame. Ultimately, the fight over roots is a fight for the soul of our national memory. The stories we pass down to our children define the world they will inherit and the people they will become. They shape what they know of justice, struggle, and the enduring human capacity for resilience. Choosing to confront our difficult past through powerful narratives like Roots is not an act of division, but an act of maturity and strength. It is an investment in a future where citizens are equipped with historical knowledge and moral courage to build a more perfect union that acknowledges its entire story.